It's very important that our Schoology Gradebook matches our Skyward Gradebook so there's not a confusion with our students and our parents, especially in the time of parent-teacher conferences. So I'm going to go through a couple of things you can look at to see what might be causing a discrepancy if you've compared the two and they aren't the same. So one of the things in your gradebook is this sync, and anytime you make a change to a gradebook, you are going to want to click the sync button so that you can make sure that it's actually syncing. The little clipboard next to it will tell you the last time it's been synced and if there are any errors or anything like that. So one of the key places to look in your gradebook is under these three dots, and you choose Bulk Edit. And with Bulk Edit, it's going to show you all of your assignments, and it's going to show you all of the details about the assignments so you can check them to make sure things are set the way you want. So one of the things is a published. This check mark means that the item is published. Now remember, if you take off the check mark so it's no longer published, it will not show up in your Schoology Gradebook. If it's already been synced, it's going to show up in Skyward but not show up in Schoology. So you want to make sure that they are published. The other thing is the category. You need to make sure that you have a category in there. So for example, these three say they're ungraded. So that would mean that they would not be syncing to Skyward because there's not a Skyward category called ungraded. If I wanted them to be synced, I would need to make sure I chose a valid category from my dropdown. Now let's say, for example, you had something that you had them turn in, but you really didn't want it graded and you didn't want it to go to Skyward. You could leave this as ungraded, but then I would go all the way over to the right-hand side where it says sync to the SIS. Then I would actually take that out so it's not graded and it's not being synced to Skyward. Now, if you've already synced it to Skyward and now you realize, oh, I didn't really want that graded, you could go into Skyward and delete that assignment out of Skyward. So publishing, having a category, those are important. The other thing to look at here, which I don't believe we're changing, is the factor. That needs to be 1. And then another column to look at is the due date. Skyward needs a due date within the grading period. So these three assignments do not have any kind of a date on them, so they would not be syncing correctly to Skyward, meaning they wouldn't be showing up in our term that we currently have. So instead, I would need to go in here and set a due date for this particular assignment, so then it will sync correctly with Skyward. And then obviously your grading period, make sure the grading period is accurate. And again, this column will determine whether you want it to sync or don't want it to sync. Any assignment that you are not grading and you're not going to count, you can click that, take the check mark out of the sync to SIS. As always, make sure that you save the changes when you're done. Another area we've noticed that have caused some discrepancy is in the grade setup. So if you go to grade setup of your course and you click on the categories that you've chosen, make sure that when you select the category that this actually says total points. Right in here you're going to choose total points. Some people have chosen percent, and I understand that you think I want my categories to be weighted a certain percent, so that's why I chose that, but that's not really what that means. So if you want to have them weighted by percent, you're going to click on this box for weight categories, and then you're going to be able to put your percent in there. If you leave percent in this individual category in the drop-down box, what that does is it takes, so for example, 3 out of 5 would be 60%, and 10 out of 10 would be 100%. It's going to average those percents rather than the points. Rather than 3 out of 5 and 10 out of 10, it's going to average the percents instead. And that's not going to match with Skyward. So you're going to want to make sure that this is calculated by total points. Another area to look at is the Skyward button on the lower left-hand side. This will tell you if things are syncing correctly. And so, for example, this is an assignment that has been opted out, meaning you're not syncing it and it's ungraded. So that's why it's going to say that. And that makes sense. That's what this teacher wanted on here. Or if there's one that you're not syncing yet, like a final exam, that's fine too. So you can sync changes right here. But if you're getting a bunch of errors along here, so they're red and they're errors, then you're going to want to go to configuration, and you're going to want to make sure that your categories match up here. So if you are using a category in Skyward, make sure that it's the same category in Schoology as well. So those have to match. Now, I know some of you did this and you're realizing that, hey, I did this before and how come it didn't save? And I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there was something in Skyward that changed and when it synced then it didn't match up again. All I ask is that you correct it and then again make sure that you save down here on the bottom. By the way, if you do open up this Skyward and configuration and there's a ton of categories chosen here that you don't use, that probably means that you haven't set up your categories in Skyward. So you would go back to Skyward as well and make sure that you choose the correct categories that you want to use, eliminating the ones you don't want, and that way that's set up correctly in Skyward as well. As always, please, please, please ask for help if you need it. I'm more than willing to work through this with you, problem solve, so please don't be afraid to ask. I'm not too busy to help.